one of the things you've written about is architecture and the importance of architecture in sacred space. And for me, one of the important things and aspects about a space to study in is that it be beautiful. One of the most stunning aspects of traditional Islamic civilization was the schools, including the children's schools, are now museums for people to go and literally marvel at their beauty. And one of the hallmarks, and I think Prince Charles talked about this in your country, the ugliness of modern architecture.
Well,
and
we're living through this, something, I think it's that Czech writer, I can't remember his name now.
Havlek?
No. Talks about the uglification of the world. Right. It's a word comes from Alice in Wonderland, actually. But it's true that people now build without any consideration for how the building fits into its environment, what it does to the street, how it looks to the passerby, purely to satisfy a client. You know, the client wants rooms for 150 offices, so you build a hideous block in the middle of things, which eliminates the street, eliminates the public square, and is something which nobody wants to look at, nobody can bear to look at. And actually, I was very impressed by the fact that Muhammad Atta, who flew that TWA flight into the Twin Towers in 2001, he did a thesis at the University of Hamburg, I think it was Hamburg, on architecture, the theme of which was how to restore Halab to its original condition as a proper Islamic town, without the mutilation inflicted upon it by these tower blocks, etc. So it was as though he was taking revenge on an architectural practice which had been introduced into the Middle East by Le Corbusier with his plans for Algiers, to wipe the whole thing away and put these motorways in the air on concrete blocks.
It's amazing.
And because of the Arab inferiority complex, there was this huge mood to do this everywhere. We're going to have a modern city with wide streets plowing through these beautiful little alleyways where people lived side by side together.
We have a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that towards the latter days you would see the destitute desert Arabs who had been taking care of goats and sheep vie with one another to build increasingly high buildings.
Really?
Yes. That's one of his prophecies.
Yeah, well, there you are. Yes. So he was right about that too?
Yes. He was...
Right.
Yes.
Yes, but this is something my good friend Marwa As-Sabuni, who is an architect in Homs, has written a beautiful book called The Battle for Home about this issue. I'm hoping you will invite her here one day.
Inshallah.
In which she documents the extent to which this new way of building in concrete shanties on the edge of the city, are knocking down all the old intimate alleyways, how that has actually contributed to the antagonism of the communities towards each other and fueled the civil war, and of course given people no sense of where they belong, because they look around them, they see this ugly set of broken teeth on the horizon. That's all it is, a town. And she writes very beautifully about the way in which the Christian and Muslim communities in that part of Syria built against each other, next to each other, with the same one wall being a church on one side and a mosque on the other.
Yes.
This way of actually settling the land as a joint possession.
Yeah, and there's a couple of very interesting. Donner wrote a book about early Islam, and he's one of the foremost experts on early Islam, and argues that the archaeological evidence indicates that the Muslims were sharing prayer space with the Christians.
Yeah, that's right.
And also Philip Penn's work on when Christians first met Muslims, which is about the Syriac. So all of the non-Orthodox churches, how they really saw the Muslims as just a great boon. And I just got a midrash from a rabbi who's a friend of mine, sent me a midrash about the Jewish rabbis saw the Muslims as a great blessing when they came into Jerusalem because they were preserving monotheism for the Temple Mount, which was being used as a garbage dump at the time by the inhabitants. I want to ask you about the great transcendent ideas of the Greeks, these three transcendent ideas of truth, goodness, and beauty, which I think show up in Islam with the idea of Iman, Islam, and Ihsan. That Iman comes out of the truth of God, the reality of God, and then Islam is a praxis of goodness, and then Ihsan is making things beautiful. And also we're using the trivium as a kind of, it's really it's the foundation of the pedagogy. This idea that logic, which is the pursuit of truth, grammar, the pursuit of goodness in communication, and then rhetoric in the pursuit of beauty. That how do we restore these transcendent values that were shared by all of the great civilizations?
I think there is no difficulty in explaining to people why truth matters. Because if you don't pursue truth, all your reasoning and thinking is based on nothing. It's only because you are confident that something is true that you can rely on it. And goodness, likewise, it's the thing without which we cannot rely on each other. It's relatively easy to defend those things. It's beauty that's the problem. I made a film once for the BBC called "Why Beauty Matters," because I take the view that the search for beauty is part of the search for right relations with others, not just right relations with God, but right relations with each other. When we enter a house and we want to make it our own, we don't make it our own for us only. It's so that other people can come in and enjoy that the way it looks, and we really worry about how things should be placed so that they harmonize. Right. And everything that we do is actually like that, and manners are part of the cultivation of beauty. And of course, this is something that doesn't need to be explained in the old Islamic way of life, that it was an attempt to make things beautiful, to make your presence not offensive to the other, but part of fitting in. And I think that is also a natural thing for all human beings, to want to fit in. And suddenly, of course, in the modern world, people don't want to fit in, they want to stand out, wearing bright, absurd clothes. Actually California being the place where this is most often to be observed. Yes. The desire to stand out and be unique. And modern,
you're at ground zero for that.
Yeah, that's true. But modern building is like that.
Yes.
The modern architect doesn't want to fit modestly in and disappear into his surroundings. He wants to be that big gesture.
I saw one of the things that Yeats reminded us of was that things reveal themselves in their passing. And there's I don't think people realize how much we've lost of goodness. There's certainly conserving what is good of the past should be at the essence of our endeavors and our challenges, but also recognizing there's still a lot of things that need changing. I really want to thank you for making this stop at Zaytuna College. One of the things that we're trying to do here is a restoration of the liberal arts tradition, which was central to the Islamic tradition. We have a great poet from the East, from Egypt, who said, وَإِنْ عَبِقَتْ فِي الْغَرْبِ أَنْفَاسُ ذِكْرِهِ وَفِي الشَّرْقِ عَلِيلٌ تَعَافَ مِنَ الضُّرِّ. If the fragrance of God's remembrance pervades the West, the sick man in the East might get well again. So we're hoping that that's what Zaytuna contributes to. the sick man in the East getting well again. So thank you very much, Dr. Scruton, and
Thank you.